everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're checking out something I've been really eager to get my hands on, and that is the Cerevo Livewedge. This is a new low-cost 4-input HDMI video switcher, perfect for YouTube creators like me and many others who are looking for something to be able to do live camera switching, and this will certainly do that for you with 4 distinct HDMI inputs. And you can really compare this to the Blackmagic ATEM Television Studio because it costs the same. So this is pretty much $1,000, you know, $995 or something like that. But this does more and also eliminates a lot of the annoyances on the Blackmagic ATEM that required additional investment to get some features working. This has most of those features built in. So let's step through the hardware here so you can see how it works. What's nice is that they give you 2 options for controlling it. So you can control the switcher using these buttons here on the front. There's a little screen here to tell you what's going on, but there's also an iPad app, and an Android app is coming soon as well that lets you control from your tablet screen. And if you're not streaming out, you can see the preview windows on that app. It's really pretty cool, so we're going to check that out in a minute. They have an old iPod style click wheel here for navigating around the different menus too, so you have the ability to change from cut to mix effects and a few other things. And I'll step through some of those in a minute or two. This might be something we do a couple of follow-up videos on because there is a great deal of depth to the product. On the back here, you've got a bunch of stuff that's worth talking about. So there is an SD card slot on here. So unlike the ATEM, this will have recording capability. At the time that I'm recording this video, that's not yet implemented, but they will have it ready soon. And what it's going to let you do is record H.264 MPEG-4 video to an SD card that's inserted into the device. You have a built-in recorder. You also notice there is Ethernet here, which we're going to plug in a minute, and that is because you can use this to stream live out to YouTube Live and other RTMP compatible video services without having to buy any more hardware. So on the Blackmagic, you'll need something else like a computer or perhaps a Teradek VDU, which is what I was using, which is a $700 device. This has it built in for the same price as the Blackmagic device. So you just plug Ethernet in here, link it up with your account using the app, and you can stream live. And I'm going to put a card up here, or wherever it shows up, a YouTube card, and you can click through and see a live broadcast that I did the other night. I did about an hour's worth of playing around with it with some of my subscribers, some of you. We had a great time just kind of messing around with it and seeing how it works, and it ran great for an hour. No drops in frames, really good output out of here. Incredibly impressive, again, for the price. You have 4 HDMI inputs here, so these are where you would plug in your cameras and other devices. So I have a camcorder, a little Sony HD camera, so we'll check that out in a minute. I also have a game console, and I've got a computer plugged into it. And this is notable because on the Blackmagic device, some of those things wouldn't work with this. So sometimes a camcorder wouldn't cooperate. Game consoles would never work just straight plugging them in because of how they output their video. This has a scaler on each of these HDMI inputs. So pretty much whatever you plug into it is going to work. And if you ever had to, trying to plug an iPhone or another, tablet or phone into your ATEM Television Studio, it never worked. This will take it just by plugging it right in. On the Blackmagic, you'd have to buy a scaler, which would convert the video into something the ATEM could accept, which of course is an additional expense, sometimes in the hundreds or thousands of dollars. Over here, you have 2 additional HDMI outputs. One is the program output for looking at what is on the screen. So if I pull up my my thing here, you can see this is what it's outputting right now. I've got the Ouya just popping out the Sonic the Hedgehog game there. But you can also, of course, let me go back over there, switch to some other inputs. This is my computer screen, and then we can go back to Sonic. And then, of course, we've got my camcorder here too. So pretty neat. That's the program output. It runs at a full frame rate. Next to that is the preview output. And let me show you what that looks like, because it's going to scare you when you first use it because it is very choppy, as you can see. But the program output, even though the preview output's really choppy, the program output is actually running at the full frame rate. It supports up to 30 frames per second at 1080. So it's 1080p. It does not do 60 frames per second. So if you're a game streamer, I know that's important to a lot of you. You might want to just keep that in mind. You're not going to get 60 frames per second out of this, but it will do 30 frames progressive. You also have, another thing the ATEM lacks, is analog audio input here too. So you can plug in something out of a mixer. So when I was doing the live stream test, I had my lavalier mic that runs through my mixer plugged right into this thing, and it worked without having to buy any additional hardware. On the ATEM, I had to buy a analog to digital converter and then hook that up. So that was another $150, $200 that I had to do just to get my microphone to work. This will work fine without that. And it also supports audio delay on that analog input too. So if your camera video is coming in slower than the audio, you can adjust the audio delay so everything kind of lines up. So they've thought of everything with this, which is pretty cool. All of these HDMI inputs also support audio too, so you can bring in audio from all 4 of the HDMI inputs plus the analog input as well. So lots of options there. So we're going to now get this thing running, and you can see how the app works and how all the video switching works. I'm going to step very quickly through a lot of the features, but it should give you an idea as to how all of this stuff kind of comes together. So let's get that app booted up and check it out. Now here is the iPad app, and what you're seeing is a live stream of the preview window being delivered to the app, and you can tap in these windows to move things around. So let me pull up our 2-up screen here, and if I double tap on input 1, you see it'll do a nice dissolve to input 1. I can go to input 3 the same way. So you have a lot of nice little switching capability here just by tapping on each of those screens. I can also bring up these little sliders here and do the same thing. So I can switch between modes a couple different ways. You'll see that it's right now selected as mix, and that is why it is doing that cross dissolve between them. But if I just wanted to do a straight cut, I can just tap with 2 fingers and it will just do a cut. I can also make the cut the default operation here too. So if I double tap with cut selected, it will do that. So you have some capabilities to do that, so you can kind of decide how you want to best do your video switching. It does a pretty nice job switching. I'm noticing occasionally that when I switch to the computer screen, I see a little bit of a jump. It doesn't do it all the time, but that was something that I've been noticing tonight as I've been playing around with it a little bit. So that's some of the basics there. You also have, let me pull up input 3 here, because you also have a full audio mixer too. So again, all 3 of these inputs can be brought in. So auxiliary is the analog input. This is the delay function that I talked about, so you can delay the audio coming in to make it line up correctly with your camera audio. And what we're also going to do here, let me just turn this off. I think we have our game console in on input 3, so I'm going to turn on input 3, and we should be hearing it now. I'm actually on it. I have my audio off here in the studio, so it doesn't pick up on my mic, but I think, yeah, we are definitely picking up some audio out of there. So it is able to run the audio out of here while it's going, so you can see that. So you have a lot of control over each audio input that you want to use, which I think is really cool. Again, all through the iPad app, very handy to be able to get at those features. Now, one thing this also has that the ATEM TV Studio doesn't is a picture-in-picture function. So what we can do here is grab, so right now we have input 1 open, and maybe we want to have our game console have a little picture-in-picture there. So what we can do is just tap on input number 3, which is the game console, drag this over to the window that we want it to appear in. We can resize it with, you know, a pinch to zoom kind of thing, and position it, and then double tap, and now you can see we've got a picture-in-picture window up there. You can't crop this or anything. You can't do more than one picture-in-picture, but you can get pretty much one window brought into another, but it has to be exactly this aspect ratio. So you can't cut off like the top or the bottom or something. You can't do something maybe like this, where one window is a little bit smaller than the other, unfortunately. So that's one limitation. Maybe that's something they could fix in firmware later, I'm not sure, but just keep that in mind as you're going around. And you can also do here too, as you saw that I just tapped on it, you can also make an adjustment. So I can move this around, make it a little bit bigger, double tap again, and it will then resize that to where it was before. And then I think I can just tap on the next input to get rid of it, and then you can go back to normal there. So it has the ability to do that. Now it also has some Chroma key features, but I'm really not sure it's going to work all that great. So watch what we've got here. I've got this soldier guy here with a pretty decent key, and I'm going to hit the thing here, and you can see he comes in over it, but you can see some green edges around him, so it's not perfect. Let me pull up the full screen here so you can get a feel for it. So it's not as good perhaps as my much more expensive TriCaster, but it might be good enough. And if you get the lighting right and you can really get that key perfect, you might be able to have some good results with it. I'm going to switch back over here. There are some ways to adjust that. What you have to do is adjust it and then later input it again. So you can drag around here. You can actually grab this little icon here and move it around and get to the right spot that you want to try to match to, and then you can do some further tweaks. It's pretty much where the ATEM is, more or less. The ATEM does have a lot more fine controls for keying, which this lacks, but you could get a basic quick and dirty key. The only problem is you can't really adjust his scaling. You can't move him around. He's going to be kind of fixed wherever you are. So if you wanted to do something where he's off to the side, you're going to need to go in and record him off to the side, because you can't move him around. Again, you can't crop either. So you do have some limitations here, and that's the same limitations you would have again on the ATEM Television Studio. And it's hard not to compare these two products because they cost the same and are kind of geared at the same audience more or less. So that is that. So that's the basic control functions. What's nice though is that you can do everything from the panel here. So I can just hit the buttons here and switch around too. And this is nice because if you're doing something like what I'm doing, which is controlling it and doing the talent, doing all the stuff that you would do in a production, it's nice to have some tactile feel to it. I have this little control pad I use with my TriCaster here, and it's really handy to be able to know what you're about to push without having to look at it. So to be able to do that here is really nice. And it will also sync up with the iPad at the same time. So if I hit a button here, if I go to 2, for example, you'll see that everything happens on the iPad immediately. Now, the live streaming feature is accessible through the little live button right up here. It integrates really nicely with YouTube Live. In fact, you can go in here and set up your event right through the app interface here, and then you can start streaming and everything right from the app directly, which is really, really nice. A couple things that I noticed. The first is that it will stream only up to 720p. For most of us in the United States, at least, with questionable upstream bandwidth, this is probably fine, but the bit rate is rather low. It's only 2 megabits per second, so I don't know if they support a higher bit rate yet. I couldn't find any way to get it higher than 2 megabits per second. The stream looked pretty good that I did the other night. Again, you can check that out in the YouTube card or in the link in the description below. But I think there are some ways to get higher bit rates using different devices. If you wanted to go higher and wanted to go to 1080p, that's where maybe you'd want to look at getting that Teradek VidiU, which can do a 1080p output and stream at higher bandwidths if you have a higher network bandwidth available to you. But this looks like what's available on it at the moment. Again, it's compatible with any RTMP streaming service too. On the input side, though, you'll notice now that we have the live streaming enabled, we don't have the ability to get the live preview on the iPad. You will still get it through the HDMI interface here, so you can see we're still seeing that preview happening here, but we're not getting it on the pad. And that's just an example. You know, when you're in the low end of this kind of product space, some features will work at the same time and other features won't, but everything else does work. Now, when they do enable the recording feature on here, that recorder will not be able to record and stream at the same time. So that may be where you may want to look at getting some other devices to maybe make all those things work at the same time. Again, when you have HDMI, you can always split it out and have, you know, maybe one end go to your high-end streamer and the other end go to a recorder. So you do have some options there. One recorder that I recommend purchasing is the Blackmagic solid-state recorder that I use here. It's called the HyperDeck Shuttle, and what I like about that is that it records onto solid-state discs, and then you can just pull those discs out and go edit with them, and you can record sometimes in the same format that your editing software uses. That's what I use for Final Cut Pro, so it gives me some more flexibility, and it works great with this because it's just a standard HDMI device. You just run HDMI into the recorder and you're done. But if you are on a budget and when they implement the recording feature, you can just go right to SD card. You may have to do some transcoding before it goes into your editing software, but most software these days will support that right out of the box. Now, one thing to keep in mind that this does not do is titling. So if you wanted to do something where like a lower third shows up underneath somebody while they're talking, there is no built-in titling or keying feature like you might have on the ATEM Television Studio. So the ATEM will allow you to put little bugs in. I think you can run like 2 or 3 different things on screen overlaid on the existing video, which you really can't do with this. You might be able to get away with it if you do like a little chroma key thing where you have a title with a knocked out against a different color, that you can do that chroma key feature that we saw, but I think it's going to look a little sloppy. It may not look all that great. So those are the sorts of things you're going to need to do in editing after the fact. So you may not really be able to get decent titling up while you're operating with a live stream on this. But that is pretty much the only real limitation I see with this, at least from the perspective as an independent, quasi-amateur, pro, whatever YouTuber that I am, that this would be good enough for a lot of what I would do. In fact, all the aggravation that I went through when I was first starting the channel using the Blackmagic ATEM, this would have not given me, which is a really big thing to say. So I think they've done a really nice job on here. They let me borrow this for 2 weeks, and just to give you my overall impression of this, instead of sending it back, I am sending them a check to buy it, because this is going to become my new backup switcher. I think it's that good, at least for what I do with it. So I really will recommend this. Again, it really, out of the box, is going to do everything you're going to need it to do to kind of give yourself a little TV studio, turnkey solution. So you got the scalers in every port, you got the analog audio input, you've got everything that you really need to get started, and you have the backup here. So if the app ever crashes, you can just use the switcher here to move around to different channels and keep everything up and running. What I also like is the video quality out of it. So I'll just switch back here to my the output from the Cerevo. It looks really nice. This is a really low-end, cheap camcorder, but you can see the frame rate is decent. Everything is in sync with the audio. and I really was impressed with how well that worked. Even the game console here looks really nice. Of course, there it goes. That was the game console just transitioning scenes. But you just look at the color definition is good. It basically looks as good as it does when it's just plugged directly into your TV, and I think they've just done a really nice job with this. And I think as they continue to kind of bang out some of the rough edges that I'm seeing with it, which aren't really all that substantial, it's going to get better over time as well. So that is the Cerevo Livewedge, and if you still have questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll do some follow-up videos. This is probably one of those things where we come back and look at things over time, because there will be some firmware updates and some other stuff on the horizon. This is Lon.TV, and thanks for watching.